Hi, my name is Victoria Rivera. I'm a wellness psychotherapist in New York City, and welcome to Mental Health Wellness Wednesday. So for the past couple of weeks, been talking a lot about burnout and how the World Health Organization has diagnosed it as a syndrome in May of this past year, and how it's really occupational stress that has not been managed. And you have burnout when you have these three symptoms: physical and mental exhaustion, cynicism, where you don't feel like you want to do any of your work, and decrease in professional efficacy, where you don't actually do your work and you're not doing it to the best of your ability. So we talked about two things over the last 2 weeks that I work with people on helping them to prevent burnout, or if they have been burnt out, to address, which is number one is sleep, getting 7 to 9 hours of sleep. We talked about napping and how important napping can be to add to your repertoire of wellness self-care. And then last week we talked about diet and how when we're on fight or flight, oftentimes our immune cells are being bathed with different hormones and cortisol and whatever, and then that kind of like suppresses our immune system, so we're not actually addressing some of the things that are going on internally. We're kind of like still on this fight or flight and worried about just kind of survival. And so if our immune system is not working properly, then that means that the food that we're eating is not getting digested, and the proper nutrients is not going where it needs to go. And especially if you're eating processed foods like we talked about, with additives and flavorings and all of those things, your body sees that as a invader, and if your immune system is not working well, then that invader is going to accumulate in your body, and that's not something you want. So I hope that you've been able to manage and learn and hopefully implement diet and sleep, a sleep regimen that can be helpful. So the last thing I want to talk to you about in terms of what I help people work on is mindfulness. So you know that the reason why meditation is imperative to have in your life is because it's a time where you can just sit with yourself, your thoughts, your feelings, your body sensations, and get back to the present moment. So one of the things that happens to us is that our attention is always being hijacked and taken away. And it's always being hijacked and taken away by external sources, sometimes our phones, things that we end up picking up because we want to avoid certain feelings or avoid having to do some things. Sometimes it gets hijacked by our thinking and worrying about something that is going to happen in the future that hasn't happened, and probably the 99% chance that it won't happen, or worried about something that we did in the past and ruminating about that, and then wishing that we would have done something different, when in actuality you're not going to be able to change and go back in time and be able to do that. But our mind spends a lot of time trying to problem solve and trying to figure out how to deal with those things. And then if it's not doing that, then again it's kind of externally looking for something to kind of to take its attention. So when you are meditating or when you're practicing mindfulness, what you're really doing is you're practicing the art of paying attention to your breath, paying attention to what you're seeing, what you're experiencing. And we talk a lot about how that is just very helpful in terms of being in the present moment and helping you to sustain attention and to not allow your mind to wander where it goes and starts to feel again anxious, thinking about the future, or maybe depressed or sad, ruminating and thinking about the past. So why is this helpful for burnout? Well, there's so many benefits to meditation and mindfulness, but I like to think about it like this way. So I've talked about this a bazillion times, so bear with me, but we don't know why we're here on this earth. We know that we have a finite amount of time here. I've been reading this book that has been pretty depressing about, kind of the different medical conditions that people suffer with in America. And the top 4 killers are diabetes, Alzheimer's, cancer, and heart disease. 1 out of 4 women will get heart disease. 1 out of 3 people will have cancer. That's 40% of Americans. Diabetes is, I think, pretty high too, 1 out of 4, 1 out of 5, something like that. Alzheimer's is 10% at least, and then after the age of 85, half of us will have dementia. So I know that sounds crazy and sounds morbid, but it's really important to be thinking about that, because one is stress And chronic stress and burnout actually contributes to all of those medical issues. It increases inflammation because, our immune system is not working properly because it's, again, on fight or flight. And so it's really worried about other things and not like allowing ourselves to kind of like heal and rejuvenate and get rid of some of those bad things that accumulate in our bodies. And we know, particularly with Alzheimer's and dementia, the plaques that form within our bodies, normally form, but, our bodies usually get rid of it. Same thing with cancer cells. Cancer cells, kind of come in our bodies, our cells, they become, oh gosh, what's the word? Well, they become kind of like toxic to us. And so our body has a way of healing itself and of figuring out what cells it keeps that are good cells, what cells are quote unquote bad cells that could turn into cancer. So these are all really important functions that our immune system does. And so when you're in chronic stress, it's really hard for your immune system to function properly. And so that's why these 4 killers can take advantage. Also too, with heart disease, like we know with eating sugar, that tends to stiffen your arteries, and also the fluid in your cells, and it also increases inflammation. It increases insulin, and insulin we know increases inflammation. So this is all the stuff that's kind of going on within our bodies. So how does mindfulness kind of work with all of that? Okay, so if you know that we have a finite amount of time, the probability or chances of you getting those diseases are pretty high on some level, right? And if you're eating a balanced diet, whole foods, and all of those things, amazing, great, continue to do that. It's really important. If you're not, start doing that, because exactly what I just said is that all of those 4 killers are related to diet, right? So if thinking about meaning of life and where you are, sitting with yourself in meditation and in mindfulness helps thoughts and feelings and sensations and emotions come up that could potentially be very informative about what you could be doing with your life, or what you should be doing with your life, or what's more in alignment with your life. Maybe you're not in a good relationship, and maybe that kind of continues to come up, and you're thinking to yourself, well, I'm like, this is bothering me about the person, this is bothering me about the relationship, and so maybe that might be helpful to understand. Do you want to continue to live that way, right? Because that causes stress. Or do you want to do something about it? So do you want to change how you are in the relationship, which that's the only thing you really have control over? Or do you want to end the relationship? The same thing with work, right? Do you want to be in that kind of relationship at work with yourself, having the stress and potentially having burnout? Is it worth it? Like, is the paycheck worth it? Is it worth you kind of feeling overworked and overloaded, and potentially having that chronic stress, and then eventually having one of those diseases? So you're not trying to be morbid, but I'm just trying to get you to think a little bit more about what your life is and try to live a more intentional life about, what you want out of your life. And that's what we talked about last night, which was a really great panel, and I'm so sorry if you weren't able to go. I did link it to the video, so I hope that you were able to check it out. It was really great. We had some amazing wellness professionals, and I was so honored to be a part of that. And we hope to have more, so maybe next time we could live stream it or something like that, and then you can come in with your questions. That's a good idea. Anyways, so like I said, sleep, diet, mindfulness, meditation will help you with preventing burnout. Next month, we will be exploring a little bit more about burnout and any other things that you might be interested in learning more about. Victoria Rivera, Wellness Psychotherapist. Thank you so much, and I will see you next week. Bye.